Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for your quick briefing on what's important in the world of work. My name is Steve Boese. Today on the show, we're digging into one of the biggest fault lines in the American workplace today: the growing gap between CEO paychecks and the wages of the people who actually keep companies running. Let's break it down. One of the most urgent and overlooked challenges in the American workplace today is growing wage imbalance. The gap between what CEOs make and what everyday workers earn has stretched so wide, it's not just an economic issue anymore. It's a crisis of fairness, trust, and long-term sustainability. Historically, it wasn't always this way. Back in 1965, the average CEO of a major U.S. corporation made about 25 times what their typical worker earned. By 1989, that ratio had climbed to 59 to 1. And today, according to the new Executive Excess 2025 report from the Institute for Policy Studies, the 100 S&P 500 companies with the lowest median wages, what they call the low wage 100, now it's a staggering 632 to 1 pay gap between the CEO and the average worker. Let that sink in. These CEOs are pocketing over 600 times what the average worker at their company takes home. At Starbucks, the gap last year reached an eye-watering 6,666 to 1, with the CEO raking in nearly $96 million, while the typical barista earned just under $15,000. And the problem is growing worse. Between 2019 and 2024, CEO pay at these low-wage 100 firms rose nearly 35%, while worker pay increased only 16%, not even keeping pace with inflation. In fact, at more than 20 of these companies, median pay actually went down. Ulta Beauty, for example, saw median wages plunge by 46% over that period, largely because more and more of its workforce was shifted to part-time status without benefits. Meanwhile, instead of investing in employees or long-term innovation, these firms are pouring billions into stock buybacks, a maneuver that boosts share prices and executive bonuses. The report finds that from 2019 through 2024, low-wage 100 companies spent a jaw-dropping $644 billion buying back their own stock. Lowe's alone spent $46.6 billion. And that's enough money to give every one of its employees a $28,000 bonus each year for 6 years. Instead, its median worker pay sat at just over $30,000, while the Lowe's CEO earned more than 650 times that amount. So why does this matter? Because extreme wage gaps don't just offend our sense of fairness, they actively harm companies and society. Research shows that huge pay disparities can drag down morale, drive up turnover, and fuel worker unrest. They deepen gender and racial inequities, since women and people of color are overrepresented in these low-wage jobs and underrepresented in leadership. And they concentrate wealth and power in the hands of a tiny elite, while millions of working people struggle to pay rent, cover health care, and save for retirement. So what can be done? The good news is solutions are on the table. Policymakers have proposed measures like taxing companies with extreme CEO to worker pay gaps, raising the tax on stock buybacks, and conditioning federal contracts and subsidies on fairer pay practices. Cities like Portland, Oregon already tax companies with wide pay disparities, and surveys show overwhelming bipartisan support for these kinds of reforms. Shareholders, too, are beginning to demand change, pushing companies to tie executive rewards to metrics like worker pay growth and job quality. But let's be clear, this isn't just up to politicians or investors. HR and business leaders have a critical role to play. Boards and executives must ask themselves, what kind of workplace, what kind of society are we building when we allow CEOs to make 600 or even 6,000 times more than the people on the front line? What message does it send to employees when their hard work is rewarded with stagnant pay while the pay at the top keeps soaring higher? The call to action is simple but urgent. We do need to recommit to fairer wages, not as a charity move, not as a PR spin, but as a core business principle. Organizations need to pay people enough to live with dignity, narrow the gap between the corner office and the shop floor, invest in employees instead of chasing stock buyback windfalls. Because the system that only enriches executives while leaving workers behind is not sustainable. economically, socially, or morally. The future of work must be built on fairness. HR leaders, business leaders, political leaders, it's time for everyone to take this issue seriously. The numbers are clear, the imbalance is clear. Now the question is, will we have the courage to fix it? That's it for the show today. Thanks so much for listening, and a big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. If this episode made you think about how your organization treats all of its workers, especially the lowest paid ones, please share it with a colleague. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.